back to the Awakening Philosophy podcast. My name is Jed, and we are reading Plato's Phaedo as we discover what philosophy is and how we can do it with the greatest excellence, and why Socrates calls it the work that we have to do while we're alive, and that we should do it well. And as we're reading the Phaedo, Socrates has left us with a very enigmatic message that on the day before he is going to be killed by the state, or the day of his death, he wants us as philosophers to follow him to the place where he's going as quickly as we can, because that is what philosophy is all about. Doesn't make a lot of sense on the surface, but that's what we are trying to figure out, and try and figure out how we can do that. So last time we did a dialectic. We exercised the logos that we've been developing in our series and applied the structure of the dialectic, which we're also learning, to what he gave us of his yoga of separating the soul from the body. So we did that investigation last time, which was a lot of fun. So we're going to recap that, and we're going to nail down the exact language for what he defines philosophy as, to give us a definition of philosophy from this text to take with us as we move forward. So let's jump in. So to pull together the sections where he describes what philosophy is, the philosopher liberates the soul from the association with the body is a quote we have highlighted here. The philosopher is deserving of death. The true philosopher's distinction that we're also interested in. What makes actual philosophy compared to what are the misunderstandings about philosophy that can make it hard for us to get into philosophy ourselves. So the true philosophy is engaged in death. And a true philosopher is deserving of death. We desire and practice. We pursue, those who pursue philosophy correctly, pursue contacting nothing else than dying and being dead. We desire and practice. So we pursue, desire, practice. We're deserving. Let's write that down. Let's keep that with us. Let's develop a definition of philosophy from what Socrates is telling us. So, and of course we can recognize the first part in this definition is the first part of our dialectic. So we have philosophy. Now we can recognize true philosophy. And we can also recognize the word true means that which is. We have been equating truth, what is true, with that which we can apprehend in the realm of being, if we can pull off the separation from the soul from the body. Another way of saying true philosophy is if philosophy exists, which is the format that we can recognize as the dialectic. Our first category is self to self, or definition. And let's write something down for this. So, we have the quote. And notice as we go, we get the quotes from the text, because we want to see the text as it is, as precisely as possible. So we have this. A person who has truly spent their life being engaged in philosophy should be of good cheer when they are about to die, and of good hope, and will attain the greatest good there. Good cheer, good hope, and greatest good. Now that's not what philosophy is. That's how we would relate to death. So we could say, others to others. If we make actually, let's do it side by side. If we were to say self in relation to others, philosophy or philosophers, and then if we had others in relation to others as our third category, and our fourth, of course, is others in relation to self, we could make this others death. So our question could be, how do philosophers relate to death? And we can add what we just read there. We're of good cheer. We are of good hope that we will reach the greatest good. Lots of good in there. That's what we could do on that dialectic. So let's start with definition. What is philosophy? Those who pursue philosophy pursue nothing else than, so he's being pretty precise, this is what it is: dying and being dead. So pursue contacting, dying and being dead. Put that down. Contacting, dying, and being dead. Interesting. Wow. We desire and practice death. There's a desire and practice. Dying and being dead. We are engaged in death, and we are deserving of death. Engaged and deserving. Dying and being dead. Well, let's just say, let's keep it as accurate for the text. Death is the word there. And we desire and practice. Yeah, that. Okay. And of course, it's nothing else than separating the soul from the body. Which is the beginning, which we later developed into a full dialecticon. So let's write that in. Separating the soul from the body. And of course, all these sort of things will go into what philosophy is not: eating, drinking, sexual stimulation. So we can throw that in, because we have to do two. So if philosophy isn't, if or philosophy isn't, is not, or false philosophy, and we have in there concern with eating, drinking, so self to self, for definition. Concerned with eating, drinking, sex, sexual stimulation, therapy of the body, buying clothes, shoes, ornamentation, ornaments for the body, ornaments, for the body. And truly a philosopher disdains those things. So that's a negative. So we could say what's false or what's, a philosopher disdains those things. So that's a negative. So we can keep it in the category we have it in. Philosophers aloof from the body and turn around towards the soul as far as they are able. Aloof from body, turned around. Towards the soul as far as able. We're developing a dialectic now from what we've been given here. Philosopher liberates the soul from the association with the body as much as possible. Another word, liberates. From the body as much as able. So we see a repetition of as far as able, as much as able. They are deserving of death as much as anybody is. So This qualifier repeats itself, so that's significant. We should keep an eye out for that. This might speak to the idea that we are seeking excellence, to do as much as we are able, aiming for the highest. That's part of philosophy, seeking excellence in what we're doing. Or it might speak to the fact that we are not completely untethered. In some spiritual traditions, they talk about a golden cord that keeps us bound to the body. And it might speak to the idea that only after death can you completely pull this off. This is death, after your final death, after they bury you. So these are possible ifs. So take these ifs in a sack, carry them with us, and see if any of them pan out. Go into our if sec in our inventory. So, one who is not at all mindful of the pleasures that arise through the body. So there's our phronesis word. So we have a choice. We could put this into what is false, because in each category you can say what's true about philosophy and what's false about philosophy and what's both. Or we could take the opposite and say, well, someone who is not engaged in philosophy would have their phronesis turned towards the pleasures of the body. We have a choice. We could take it either way. As we go, I guess you'll develop your own style, or you'll recognize, or perhaps as we go further, we'll recognize when is it better to put it in the negative within here or the positive within here. That is, should we put phronesis of body here, or should we put not phronesis of body here? As what you would not say, because we can say what's true about it, those things. What's false about it, what could you never say? You would never say it's phronesis of the body. And what's true and false. You might even like to put it in the true and false category. What's true and false? Phronesis. Phronesis. Why? Because there is phronesis, but it's phronesis of the self, not the body. See, for me, that feels better. That feels like a more artistic to put it there. But it's a choice. For now, because we're making a list and we don't know how long the list is, so this will be our notes for our dialectic on philosophy. If philosophy is and if it isn't. Which has been our question for a long time. What is philosophy? And as it's one of the most misrepresented things that we have in our world, what isn't it? And of course, the fact that it's been so misrepresented is one of the big causes for the problems that we have. Why haven't we picked up philosophy? Why are we behind? Why is it difficult to get into philosophy? So not phronesis of the body, we'll throw that in here. Not phronesis of the body. We can keep these as loose notes. We don't have to get it perfect first time. What about the acquisition of self-phronesis? Is the body an obstacle or not? Do human beings comprehend any truth by sight? So self-phronesis has something to do with comprehending truth. So let's add that into another part of our board. What is phronesis? What is phronesis? Now, whoops. There we go. What is phronesis? Now, that's a puzzle we're taking with us. That's a question we have in our question set. But from all this practice of doing the dialectic, which of course we're exercised to do, we're encouraged to do by Parmenides. In fact, that's exactly what he says to Socrates he must exercise himself in being able to do in order to play the philosophical game, to get into philosophy, to overcome his problems, and to reach truth. Here we go. Collect ourselves together. So this activity of doing the dialectic is collecting ourselves together, which is interesting because one of the steps of the yoga of separating the soul we saw last time was to collect ourselves together from all quarters. So this activity is that. So we're kind of doing that very activity that we're learning as we go. So we're defining it and demonstrating it, which is always a good principle to do in philosophy. That which you're defining, try to demonstrate it as well. Right? Which goes back to our fundamental dyad of, actually we can add it to our list of dyads. Dyad is a 2 skill tree. So let's make some skill trees with 2s. Got a bunch of 3s over here. Let's do a 2. Have our fundamental one is knowledge and we want to say understanding. Right. That which we're understanding, we have to turn it into knowledge. We need to understand the reason why these beliefs that we're getting from Socrates must be true, which is what we're doing through the dialectic, following the parts, putting into a structure of the logos, following how the steps fit together. But also we want to confirm it in our direct experience. What's wonderful is the dialectic, according to that quote from the Parmenides, is the way in which we do. So we're covering both bases. The dialectic is that which prepares us. And so, seeing as we've seen that in the quote from Parmenides, is that quote again? Collect thyself together by exercising more in that way. In the text, it was the dialectic that appears to be useless to the many, to the multitude, and is called by them empty talk. For if you do not, while you are still young, the truth will utterly elude you. So, also we have from Zeno. Whoops, 2 quotes at the same time. What a mess. Let's wait. For the many are ignorant that without this dialectic, this discursive procession through all real beings, it happens to be impossible for the intellect to hold onto the truth. There we have the quote Zeno, and there's the Stephanus number if you want to get the quote for yourself. So this is how we apprehend truth. What's interesting is we can see some similarities because what we went through last time, we saw that there was a collecting of ourselves together in the separating of the soul from the body. Also, we saw that by exercising our understanding, our dianoia, free from our physical senses, is that which will prepare us most for the divine self to open us up to this. So we see how these two are both needed and they're intimately connected, understanding and knowledge. And of course, one way of distinguishing philosophy from non-philosophy is whether or not they have this. If philosophy is not about the dianoia, the logos, and the dialectic applied to knowledge, applied to the real beings and the self, knowledge and the self, if it's not that, then it's not philosophy, it's something else. Okay, so let's recap what we've done. So we have seen that we're looking through the text for the parts where Socrates is talking about what philosophy is, but we're skipping out some of the parts like self-justice, reaching self-beauty and the good, reaching the apprehension of the ousia of greatness, health, strength, any of those cells, and focusing specifically on philosophy in relation to death, because that's this kind of dialectic we're doing it right now. That's what we're interested in. Why? Because we've done a dialectic on separating the soul from the body. And let's see what past dialectics were. We have this one. If the soul can exist. So that's if the soul is. Soul alone. If the soul alone exists. That was our first dialectic. What is it? Itself, self by self, noesis of the ousia of each being, and self-phronesis. Purifies, liberates. How do we relate to others? We believe and say this, and we affirm it to be true, and so on. This is if the soul exists, and if it doesn't. We did a dialectic on the yoga of how to pull off the separation from of the soul from the body, which is, where do we put it? Here. What is it? Purification, already mentioned in the logos. Demonstration. What is it? To separate the soul from the body as far as possible. That's what purification is. How do we do it? Division. Accustom ourselves to gather our soul together from all quarters. Collect self by self out of the body. Dwell alone by self as far as able, both now and the future. I take all those, synthesize it, and analyze it. All of this can be called a liberation from the chains of the body, the separation of the soul from the body. That's called death. Liberation and separation of the soul from the body is death. Also, it's the study and exercise of the philosophers. So, death. What is purification? Death. That was a little dialectic on purification. And also involving a yoga, a method for this activity that is called the study and exercise of the philosophers. Now we are taking all of the things that we've read about philosophy that defines it in relation to death. We saw true philosophy, if philosophy exists, in relation to death. So that would be our self in relation to other. Other would be death, philosophy would be the self of this dialectic. What is philosophy? What is true philosophy? Pursuing, contacting, dying and being dead. To desire and practice dying and being dead. Is to engage and deserve death. Separating the soul from the body. It's being aloof from the body and being turned around towards the soul as far as we are able. It's liberating from the body as far as able. It's not phronesis. Philosophy is not phronesis of the body, but it's the philosophy is the acquisition of self-phronesis. And then we jumped ahead to how do we relate. So this is what it is itself, definition, and then we would have self to another, and then other to other, and then other back to self. This other back to self, or how do we relate back to philosophy? We do a self-dianoia to each being with the logos without any physical sense. So we recognize that this is from the text. So how do we play the game of philosophy? We have our Sherlock Holmes. We're like detectives. We put our Sherlock Holmes hats on, look for clues. What are clues? Key terms. Key terms either to the logos or to the text. right? Whole and part. The whole is the logos, the part is the text. A Platonic text reflects the logos. That's why we're interested in Plato and Socrates, because they are functioning with the logos, and we can learn about the logos from what they do. Whole and part. If you're familiar with our work on the Parmenides, you recognize whole and part as a self-a term, a self-a pair. So, what words stick out according to the logos? Oh, dianoia sticks out here. What else? Beings. But we also have a clue. Self-er terms, in other words, terms that you can apply the word self to elevate its existence from an adjective to a substances. Not beautiful as a descriptive word to describe something, but self-beauty. An actual thing, beauty itself, a noun, adjective to noun. So this is why this new translation is so important. It actually gives us the word self. It translates altos not as it, but self. So we can have a look for the word self as a clue. If you see the word self, maybe it's the start of a self-a term, which is a key word, which might mean you have to pay attention, or there's a puzzle to be solved. So that's the logos, the key terms specific to the logos. But also, what are key terms specific to the text? Purification and liberation, right here, the ones in blue. We've been talking about liberation and perfection and purification as what's involved in the soul separating from the body. Okay? Also, narratively, in the mythology of the text, the ship to Delos is a ritual to symbolize purification. Socrates is liberating himself from his body at the end of his life. Also, something that will stand out if we are ready to see it is if we've done the work in the dialectic, we can recognize the key terms, the key phrases. Self by self. That reminds me of the dialectic because it's the first category of the dialectic. So, there's a puzzle to be solved. We've got some clues. This clue here, we've got some key terms that are all in a big bunch. So, that which does philosophy most perfectly and as we have understood it all the way, all of the things we're interested in philosophy, justice, beauty, goodness, all of the ousia of the selves. How do we do it? Well, we do it most perfectly. That just stand out to us because we're interested in excellence. Also the word perfection. Approach each being with the self-understanding by not associating with sight. So what is self-dianoia? Applied to being, using the logos, that should stand out. Thankfully we have the Greek, so we can look for the word logos. Dialectic. So as we do this, not only can we use the specific terms, so how do we relate back to philosophy if philosophy exists? The self-dianoia to each being with the logos without any physical sense, and we can take all those parts, unify it together. We can bring with us the understanding that we already have. Dialectic. We've just defined dialectic. That's what is dialectic? It's how we relate back to philosophy, if philosophy exists. Why? Because it purifies, liberates, and it also allows the soul to acquire truth and mindfulness. So we can add this, we can say, why dialectic? Well, 1, it purifies and liberates. And liberates. And number 2, we spell that quickly. It enables us to acquire, and enables. Oh, and we also see here, troubles the soul. So we can recognize as part of purification is liberates from body and troubles. And also it enables the soul to acquire truth and mindfulness. Reach being if anyone does. Enable soul to acquire truth and phronesis. And reach being. Okay, so we can see a duad there. Purification from the body and our troubles, and also enabling soul to acquire truth and phronesis. We can go back to our skill tree, our 2 skill tree, there it is. Knowledge and understanding, definition and demonstration. We want to demonstrate what we're defining. We want to turn our understanding into direct experience. Removing problems and reaching our highest meaningful goals. That was the duad we just saw. Purification or liberation and perfection. Or liberation or reaching being. Truth. So we have some nice dyads there. We can recognize this. Purification and perfecting. And of course we can wonder, does purification awaken us to knowledge? Do we perfect ourselves by developing our understanding through the dialectic? Does this dialectic understanding allow us to get a correct definition of the things? And if we're purified from our problems, are we able to demonstrate that which we're defining in ourselves? Does this purification help us remove problems? Does this use of the logos through understanding help us reach our highest, most meaningful goals? Because another way of saying that, reaching being or truth. If we're liberated from our body, do we diminish our problems in a significant way? See how that works? All of these duads we picked up along the way and added to our skill tree, we can rub the branches together to gain new insights and gain deeper insights and understanding. There you go. Isn't that cool? And of course, we have a dialectic on perfection. We did that last time. Dialectic on perfection. No, dialectic on purification, sorry. Purification. What is it? Separating the soul from the body as far as possible. How do you do it? These 4 steps. Collect the soul together from all quarters. Now, we recognize that dialectic is somehow doing that. Does dialectic do that? How would we collect our soul together? Can we move it? Can we force it? I'm not sure. But we do have this quote from Parmenides, which might give us a clue. collect ourselves together. Ooh. By exercising in that way that appears useless to the multitude, we should add in that we saw that that is specifically dialectic in the text. But also we have from Zeno, without this discursive procession through all beings, and we can recognize that as also dialectic, it happens to be impossible for intellect to hold on to the truth. Also we have the ousia self that is woven together into the ideal selves. We demonstrate in detail about the ideas which we grasp by the activity of the logos. And we can recognize that the activity of the logos is the dialectic. So from Zeno, Socrates, and Parmenides, we have these quotes from our past read along. Now, we're taking that with us, but we can see it in the text too. And we are demonstrating it ourselves. So how do we collect ourselves together? Is it some sort of awareness of our breath or our soul? Do you move your soul around? Maybe your attention? Often yogas and meditations that talk about moving your attention from the tips of your toes to the top of your head. That seems to be this. But do we have to force our attention? Following the guidance of somebody else? Or does this dialectic do it on its own? By engaging ourselves in this reflection that we're doing, making these dialectic exercises, does it do this for us? Is that part of it? So you don't have to force it, it just comes along as part of the game. Collect self by self out of the body. Well, there's our expression. Self by self is the first part of the dialectic definition. When we're doing the dialectic without using our senses. Interesting. Dwell alone by self as far as possible, both now and in the future. We keep doing it over and over again. By the way, if you can pull this off, it's called the liberation and separation of the soul, or death. It's also the self-study and exercise of the philosophers. This is interesting because we have those quotes from Parmenides. Exercise more in that way. That appears to be useless to the multitude. Dialectic. And it's called by them empty talk. So this attaining the truth is there, but also exercise is there. So there might be a clue. He's defined death, and that is the key term. So we have the definition. What's the definition? Purification. We want to understand how to purify ourselves. Demonstration. Give a quick summary of what it is. Separate the soul from the body as far as possible. Okay, I want to hear more about it. Divide it into its parts. Division. From those division into parts, synthesize it together and pull it together. Synthesize it together into one key term, death. And then analyze, take that key term and bring it back to the start. Death is our purification. So this might answer our question. In what way does Socrates mean that death is philosophers most deserve death? In what way our dialectic on philosophy in relation to death? In what way do we pursue and contact dying and being dead? We desire and practice this. This is what if philosophy truly exists. This is the true philosophy according to Socrates. How are we engaged and deserving in death? Well, we saw death can be linked to purification. And that whole thing both can be tied to the dialectic. And also, this can be tied to the exercise and study of the philosopher, which again confirms, it's a way of confirming our hypothesis that maybe it's dialectic. Interesting. So we seem to be going through, well, if all yogas essentially can be boiled down to having this as an essential component, spiritual yogas are spiritual in that they're interested in the spirit, and yoga means method. So all spiritual yogas, breath work, chanting, mantras, counting, psychedelics, hatha yogas, heat yogas, kundalini yogas, all these yogas are all yogas or methods for pulling off this dying, separating the soul from the body. And we are suggesting that, well, there is a way of doing that through the use of the logos. That's philosophy, making it a jhana, or thinking, or intellectual yoga. G-Y-A-N-A. So how do we do that? Well, it sounds like if this is the definition of true philosophy, and then how do we relate back, others back to self? The last part, these are just notes. This isn't a complete dialectic. These are the notes that we can pull together and make a dialectic of true philosophy. And we'd have to also do, if philosophy doesn't exist, and we have that, it's concerned with eating, drinking, sexual stimulation, therapy of the body, clothes, shoes, Bugattis, ornaments of the body, cleaning your room, that sort of thing. As if philosophy is not, or false philosophy. We also recognize, hang on a second, from the text, it says that we do this, we acquire self-phronesis or perfection, and we liberate from the body or purification. There's our duad of purification and perfection by self-dianoia of each being with the logos, without physical senses. And we know all those are the parts of one thing called the dialectic. And the question is, why do we want to do this dialectic? Purifies and liberates, and enables us to acquire these things. So, purifying and liberating us from our problems removes us from the path that we are compelled to walk according to the anti-logos, reaching fate. The logos path, that the self-logos part to our highest destiny is called, well, to our highest goals is called destiny. And if we're getting guidance from how to do this from our mind, from our random thoughts, from this text, the logos of this text, so long as we what? Do this, apply the logos. Hey, if you have a dream and you just ignore it, you're not going to get the benefit from it. But if you understand it, you will. What's the name for understanding in the highest way? Logos. How do you do it? Dialectic. So if we apply the logos and dialectic to dreams or this text, which is why we're reading it in the first place, we can uncover information about this, the anti-logos and the self-logos, one reaching our fate that we want to escape or purify and liberate ourselves from, and one reaching destiny where we want to acquire truth and phronesis. What's that called? An intelligent, providential message to us that you unpack through the logos and dialectic. Providence. What did we read last time? It is entirely possible to prove that we live in a caring and intelligent universe. What's caring and intelligent? Providence. What we read from the blurb from the Philosophical Midwifery text by Dr. Pierre Grimes. So it is a kind of verification that we have to see for ourselves. Actually, let's get that quote down and add it to our list of quotes. It is entirely possible to verify for oneself that we are part of a caring and intelligible universe. The verification is a kind of proof, since it is a way of understanding that is based upon a realization that our mind constantly communicates with us and for our benefit. So we can solve that. We can add some terms that we have in our back pocket from the logos and the dialectic that we've been doing. What does it mean to be part of a caring and intelligible universe? Providence. How did we verify that for ourselves? The definition and demonstration. Defining the dialectic and demonstrating it, doing it ourselves. And did we verify it? Yes. So we could summarize that and say it's entirely possible to recognize providence and share in providence through, and you can see it for yourself, through definition and demonstration of the dialectic.
Wow.
That's cool. Good for us. So, and that's what we have here. We have these two parts. So we have fate and destiny, the logos and anti-logos. Some more pairs. Let's go to our pair skill tree. So we can say the fate and destiny is a pair. So you can add that to your dyad skill tree, level up. And you can have the anti-logos. That's against the logos, or the pathologos. The most, unsuspected, deeply held false belief about yourself and reality that fundamentally believes the self is inadequate, the self-mind is inadequate, or the self-logos is inadequate, thus blocking you from participation in the self-logos and reaching your destiny, that which keeps you tied or bound to the repeating cycles of failure that we want to liberate ourselves from. Pathologos, which also includes identification with the body, which we are liberating ourselves from, that we're seeing as significant in this text, versus the self-logos. So we have some cool duads there. Okay. So building that up as we go, that's cool too. Oh, and so rub them together. Are we purifying ourselves from the anti-logos? Like, just pick, you can like roll a dice and pick some. Does the self-logos necessary for understanding? Does fate... I don't know. Do our problems relate to our fate? Do we demonstrate our fate every day if we haven't gone through this process? Is our highest, most meaningful goals, can you understand that as destiny? Yeah, literally, it's what the word means. See how this works? Isn't it awesome? I think it's awesome.
Wow.
So I do this, and we get confetti. But I also want confetti on the screen, so I have this button. Confetti, yay. And I want balloons, so I do this. Let me get some balloons. And some more confetti. And we get some claws. Yeah, good for us. So, so we can take that, what we've gained already, and keep reading to see what else we can see. then this makes the noble philosophers believe and say something like this, inasmuch as was likely, as it were, a straight path with no deviations. There you go, the straight path with no deviations. The dialectic, the logos, to guide us along with the logos. Oh, is that path the dialectic that guides us along with the logos? Does logos and dialectic go together? In the consideration that as long as we possess our body and our soul, you are contaminated with a corrupting agent, and you never sufficiently attain what we desire. Okay, and then we have these things. The body keeps us busy with diseases and need for sustenance, and we will impede our chase for reality, pursue passions, desires, fears, illusions, and engage in war and civil discourse. So we can add this to the dialectic of what philosophy isn't. In relation to death, what is philosophy? What isn't philosophy? Concerned with eating, drinking, sexual stimulation, ornaments of the body. We can say, how do we relate to each other, or others to others? Others to others, or division, which is actually the third step. We have war, civil discord, and battles. War, civil discord, battles. Is that pretty much what's happening right now? Are we engaged in perpetual war? Are we always fighting amongst groups? Left and right, woke and fascist, and right wing and left wing, and Republican, and blah 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 blah, Palestinian as Israel. Is our civil discourse all discordant or harmonious? Do we come together in shared understanding, or is all of our civil discord on media bullshit, brainwashing, propaganda, nonsense to further justify and perpetuate wars and battles? Right? So we're saying, oh, this is what happens if philosophy doesn't exist.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
So this dialectic not only is giving us the method of the dialectic to liberate ourselves from our problems, purify from our problems, perfect ourselves to our highest goals, it can be applied to humanity as well. Same thing. The logos, it's the same. Cool? That we have in black and white, so long as we did the work of unpacking it through this activity, interest and engagement and use of the logos and dialectic to unpack it, we can discover how to solve the world's problems. No biggie, but also our own problems. Because who knows how long it will take for the rest of the world who knows how long it will take for the rest of the world to give up on this civil discord that justifies war and battles and sustains it. Because people are concerned with this stuff of the body, collecting shit, and they don't realize that we have a way of purifying and liberating ourselves from our troubles and reaching our highest goals. Who knows how long the rest of the world will take, but we can do it. We can achieve our development and our enlightenment for both now and in the future. What does it say? Where's our dialectic of the yoga? It's an individual yoga, but it's also, as it's the logos, it's also the world yoga. That's why we use the word destiny of man. It's not just our destiny, it's everyone's destiny. Both now and in the future. Right? And last time we talked about how that might allude to the your own psychic development and the separation from the cycles of reincarnation. Cool? So, let's go back to our dialectic that we're doing of if philosophy exists in relation to death. So we've got this is self and other here. jump into the text. The body fills us with passions, desires, fears, and illusions and foolishness. Okay, so we can add that into as well. If philosophy isn't, how does it relate to us? Or how does, if philosophy doesn't in relation to death, self to others or demonstration? Well, it fills us with passions, desires, fears, and illusions. But that's us. That's how philosophy relates to us. It fills us with those things. But that goes into our other dialectic of if the soul exists. Remember that one we did a little while back? If the soul exists, we got so many notes. If the soul exists, if the soul alone exists, if it doesn't, here we go. How does it relate? Number one, self to self. Number two, self to others. It troubles the soul. It's a corrupting agent. It fills us with passions, desires, illusions, fears, and foolishness. Okay, so this is the soul in relation to us. If the soul can't exist alone. So we'd have the self would be the soul alone, and the others would be us as philosophers. This is how the soul that can't be alone is always tied with the body. What is it? How would you define it? Dragging along the sense perceptions always. How does it relate to us? It corrupts our soul. We never reach what we desire, and we're filled with these passions, desires, fears, illusions, and foolishness. Yeah. So that we saw that, and we could relate it to our everyday world. If based on the fundamental false belief that the soul can't exist alone, separate from self, from separate from the body. Sorry. This is what happens. How many people do you know have engaged in this dialectic? By the way, if you do meet people who talk in this way, that goes on to this category, number 3, others to others. How do we relate to our friends? We believe and say this. We talk in this way. We talk, hey, by the way, do you know that the soul can exist on its own, separate from the body? And it's really awesome. If you do it, you're able to attain the ousia and the self-phronesis of each being. That's knowing. By the way, that activity purifies you and liberates you, helps you acquire what you actually most want. Philosophers believe and say this to each other and go out of our way to affirm it. They do it. How? Define it and demonstrate it. Understand the logos and the dialectic and do it. And that's what we're doing now. So yay for us. Yay for us. Yay. That's how we relate others to others in this dialectic of the soul existing alone. But here we're doing a different kind of dialectic where we started one before, if philosophy exists and if it doesn't. But if true philosophy exists in relation to death, so if philosophy does not exist, how does it relate? How does it demonstrate to us? No, how does it demonstrate to death? So we want to look for, we can say, well, how does death relate to others? How does death relate to us? We kill ourselves. We argue with ourselves. We battle ourselves. Right, so we can see that. So that fits. We can say we kill ourselves. Fight and hurt each other. But how does philosophy that doesn't exist in being, relate to death? That's what we would put here in this part. Okay? So let's jump into the text. So let's skip ahead to now that we have the part that we were wanting to nail down, specifically pursue, contact, desire, practice, engage, deserve in death and dying. What is philosophy? The pursuit, the desire, the practice, and the engaging of death. Pursuit, contacting, desire, practice, engaging, and deserving. We could summarize all of these words under one idea: pursuing, desiring, engaged in, deserving, contacting. If this has the benefit, so long as we have the benefit of liberation and the benefit of the acquisition of phronesis and truth, so we have the purification and perfecting, the two kinds of benefit. If we bring this in with benefit, we can have the word art. And that's a word I'm bringing in with me because I recognize that it's art involves some knowledge, which is defined as the reaching of being, and it involves benefit. And we have the two kinds of benefit: the purification and the perfection, the liberation and the acquisition of our highest goals. So if it has knowledge and it has benefit, you can take those two words and apply the Greek word to summarize all these particulars: pursuing, contacting, desiring, practicing, engaging, deserving, that which allows you to attain truth of the beings, called knowledge, and benefit, art. So we could take with us this idea that philosophy is the art and practice of dying and being dead. Okay? Or we could take that as a tentative hypothesis and look for confirmation in the text and carry all of the specifics: pursuit, contacting, desiring, practicing, engaging, deserving, death, and being dead. That's what philosophy is. Isn't that weird?
Wow.
What a weird way of understanding the purpose of life. The purpose of life is to engage in, practice, and contact death. To live well is to die often. That should be a bumper sticker. Hey, Socrates says, to live well is to die often. If you don't, we have the problems that you'd be concerned with eating and drinking and therapy of the body and clothes and shoes and Bugattis and sexy times and you end up in war, civil discourse, killing ourselves and fighting and hurting each other. Or you can engage in the art and practice of death and dying. Isn't that curious? That should be curious. That should be interesting. I think it should be. And if it is, good, because that can go into your questions and your hypotheses that you can get puzzled about, focus on, fixate on. Enhanced concentration evolves into meditation. Enhanced meditation evolves into contemplation. So, baby Squirtle is concentration. Sustained concentration, he evolves into... What does Squirtle evolve into? War turtle. Sustained meditation evolves into Blastoise. Right? So the triad of... And if this is a puzzling question or puzzling hypothesis, either or, question or hypothesis, how is it that to live well and to spend your time while you're alive is to practice, study, and exercise death and dying. How is that the best? So to live well is to die well and die often? That's the bumper sticker. To live well is to die well and die often before they bury you. That's cool. I like that one. Jump into the deck. So this was the section that we went through last time, and we separated it off. We recognized that, purification as a definition. We could use it in a dialectic. Hey, by the way, do you know what purification is? Yep. Okay. Move on. Or, no, I don't. Okay. Well, here's a demonstration. It's separating the soul from the body as far as possible. Get it? They say yes, move on to the next point in the conversation. If not, definition, demonstration, division. Oh, you don't know what that is? Well, it's to accustom yourself to gather together from all quarters, and then collect yourself by self out of the body. And then to dwell alone as far as you are able to there. And then also do it now and in the future. Division. Now, what do you do after you've divided it up? You synthesize it. Oh, that's liberation, as if it were the chains from the body. And then you bring it all together. Liberation and separation of the soul from the body, that's death. Now we apply it back to the start. What's purification? Death. In this way. Then only those who practice philosophy in the right way, this is the right way of doing it, according to Socrates, are always indeed most eager to liberate self, and this liberation and separation of the soul from the body is the self-study exercise of the philosophers. And we've given it a name, dialectic. And then if we give that the name dialectic, we can see, by the way, does dialectic involve collecting yourself together? Yeah. That's literally what we got from Parmenides. Collect yourself together by exercising in that dialectic. And the word exercise is in there too. So let's look at the next part. Step 1, gather yourself together as one. Step 2, collect self by self out of the body. What's self by self? That's the first category of the dialectic. So what are you doing once you're out of the body? More dialectic. Dwell alone, self as far as by self as far as you are able. Hey, keep doing it, both now and in the future. So it sounds like dialectic is the method for this yoga, making it an intellectual or philosophical yoga, but also it's what we want to do once we're out of the body. Always, now and the future. I wonder why. I understand that if you liberate yourself, purify yourself from your problems, and you're able to perfect yourself and reach this state of knowing of the true beings out of your body, separate from the body, I understand how that would be what we want. So I understand why dialectic would be useful to do that. But once you're there, once you're purified, once you're free of your problems, and after you've reached your goal, you have knowledge of the truth, and you are in that curious thing called self-phronesis. What wouldn't you stop? Hasn't dialectic served its purpose? Why are there hints that you would still want to keep doing it? Collect self by self out of the body. That's a puzzle. I don't know. Like there's a saying in, I think, Buddhism. Once you use the boat to cross the river, you don't carry the boat with you on your back. For those who think that, who understand Buddhism as a method for crossing a river, once you've crossed the river, you don't call yourself a Buddhist anymore. So why, and if the dialectic has allowed you to pull this stunt off, why would you keep doing it? That's a question that seems to be pointing to the idea that you do keep doing it. And this is the study of the philosophers. What's philosophy? Dialectic. How can you say another way? Oh, it's purification. Oh, it's also attaining your highest goals. Oh, it's also death. It's the art and practice of death and dying. Lots of different ways of saying the same thing. You say it in the negative. Oh, if you don't do it, you'll just be pushed around by your body. The body will come pouring in a clamor to drive you out of your mind. Yeah, you'll be driven out of your mind if you don't do this. Whatever you do, you'll be distracted by illusions, foolishness, passions, desires, fears, desires, passions, pains. All of those things will come clamoring in and drive you crazy, drive you out of your mind. That's what happens if you don't do it, by the way, according to this text. Isn't that interesting? I think so. So, that's why we're most eager to liberate ourselves in this way. And then he's saying, by the way, wouldn't it be absurd for a brave who has prepared himself in his life as close as possible to being dead? There we go. Philosophy. What has Socrates done in his life? Prepared himself for being dead as much as possible. When it comes to him, wouldn't it be absurd for him to be upset about this? So he's not upset about his death. So not only is this a good way of living, it allows you to die in the best kind of way. You're not going to be upset about dying. You're going to be kind of looking forward to it, because you've been spending your whole life experiencing it and preparing for it. Okay, this is where we're up to now. Accordingly then, those who practice philosophy correctly are studying to die. There we go. And fear death least of all human beings. Okay. This looks like a good part. I'm going to take a quick break. I'll be back. We're going to read this. Now that we have all of this understanding with us under our belts, we've leveled up. It's ours now. Let's take it with us in our vision to see what else he has to say about this.